I'm really hoping that this podcast, that the network reaches some people that are curious. And I really hope it reaches some people out there that are really happy in the job that they have, but
Yeah.
might want to take a look at something that might be a little bit unique and a little bit different than what they're used to out there in the market and just reach out and inquire.
There's a major crisis facing healthcare facilities management. We have aging employees, aging buildings, and aging infrastructure. We've created the Healthcare Facilities Network, a content network designed specifically to help solve for these three pressing issues in healthcare facilities management. We bring on thought leaders and experts from across healthcare facilities management, all the way from the C-suite to the technician level, because at the end of the day, we're all invested in solving the aging issue. Thanks for tuning in. Look at our videos. You will find that as a theme across our content. This is the Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to my guest today, Joe Taylor. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, Pete.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm happy to join you today. My name is Joe Taylor. I am the executive director of facilities at Owensboro Health Regional Hospital in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Excellent. Joe, thanks for jumping in. And this is a little bit of a different episode for us. Joe, you are the inaugural, the first, the number one. Thanks for being a guinea pig.
My pleasure.
Yes. So, Joe, can you tell our guests, because I talk all the time, why are you appearing on the Healthcare Facilities Network today?
So I'm getting ready to retire after a very lengthy time in healthcare facilities leadership. I've been in healthcare since 1979 when I was at Ohio State University as a very young, very green night shift patient unit manager at the Children's Hospital there while I was getting my graduate degree. So I won't tell you. I'll let you work the math on how many years that is.
Were you getting your graduate degree at Ohio State?
I was in healthcare administration.
Did you enjoy the national championship this year?
Yes, but let me give you context. So for those of you that are college football fans, that was the last year of Woody Hayes.
Oh.
And so I was there for the Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler interactions and competition. And also, I think that was the year he slugged the player on the field. But
Joe, I'm old enough to remember that. I remember watching that. I was 12, it was 7. I wasn't even 12 yet. I was 11. I remember watching, it was the Gator Bowl. I think I was watching it with my mother, and it only stuck out to me because I remember him punching the guy on the sidelines.
right. So anyway, so that's kind of when I started my career. So I've been in a long time. So I've decided that I want to retire from healthcare facility leadership. And so I'll be leaving Owensboro Health in September of this year. And quite frankly, I have offered to do everything I can to find my replacement for Owensboro Health. This is an awesome place to work and an awesome team, and I'm very attached to the leadership and the people on my team, and I would like to help foster a change of the guard that is just good for everyone.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where I am.
That's great. No, that's great, Joe. And thank you for that lead in because, one of the things that we talk a lot about here on the Healthcare Facilities Network is aging buildings, aging infrastructure, and aging employees and the lack of people coming in very thematically. And you're involved heavily in Kentucky and with your local chapters and with Mike Canales and his work at Owensboro, Community College. So you're well aware of this, but we harp on those because it's kind of scary as you look out. And I think, and this is why,
I'm very happy to have Joe today. And I've said this going back to my recruiting days at Gosselin Martin. I think that organizations need to do more to attract people. Like the old way is just not enough anymore, right? Where you just kind of roll out help wanted and people, it doesn't exist anymore. And I thank Joe for appearing to promote the opportunity, to promote his opportunity, to promote his organization, because it's a competitive market out there, and people need to be given reasons to go to organizations. And this is kind of our attempt at the Healthcare Facilities Network to let's promote Joe's great opportunity out there. Let's get it to an audience of people who work in facilities management, because the days of 5 years ago, pre-COVID, where people would just get up and move and they're much more discerning these days. People aren't traveling the country. And so, what we want to do in this episode is really allow Joe to talk about the opportunity, to talk about the organization and to attract people in there. Because I think, Joe, last thing, and then I'll stop, you've given a nice roadmap. You're going through the rest of the summer, you've told the organization, you're trying to promote the person, but what are you, as you've gone to the market, Joe, what are you guys finding as far as response is concerned?
Well, the response is using the typical recruiting methods have generated several candidates, but not enough.
Hmm.
And really, I would say not enough of really high quality candidates. I'm sorry to say,
Hmm.
but you're right. I mean, it used to be, you could call Jack Gosselin, or you could go on the ASHI website, and there'd be a whole list of jobs. And if you were interested in a job, you could pick a region of the country, you could look, you could get information, and there would be a lot of candidates out there, and that's just not happening. And I don't know whether we're not reaching people,
Mm.
Pete, or whether maybe part of it's the economy and the uncertainty out there, that people are just kind of hunkering down and not really interested in taking a risk right now. And I think I was telling you that when I got a call from the senior recruiter here, Angie Dennis. I was working out in Colorado Springs, and I don't know how Angie found me, but she called me, and ultimately I told her, I said, Angie, I don't know anything about Kentucky. I had left Florida to go to Colorado, and loved it out there, and Angie said, why don't you just come down and take a look? And I told her, I said, I told my wife about Kentucky, and she said, the only thing I know about Kentucky is Elvis Presley's song Kentucky Rain. That's about the extent of what we knew about Kentucky. But Angie finally convinced me to come take a look, and I was just extremely, extremely impressed. But back to your question, I'm really hoping that this podcast, that the network reaches some people that are curious. And I really hope it reaches some people out there that are really happy in the job that they have, but
Yeah.
might want to take a look at something that might be a little bit unique and a little bit different than what they're used to out there in the market, and just reach out and inquire.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what we're hoping for too. And to be clear, just to amplify what Joe said there, you can see there's this little QR code or I still call it a QR code barcode. You know what I mean? But so if you're interested, don't go through me, go through the organization. You can click on this code and you can get more information, reach out, and I'm happy to connect people. But we're not recruiting for this role, but we are publicizing that this role exists. And Joe, just really quickly, you've been there for about 15 years now, correct?
That's correct. I was here 15 years in March.
So tell us, what is the scope? Now, the formal title is what? Executive Director for Owensboro Health, correct? What's the scope of your role, though? Because as you know, titles these days are kind of bastardized. They don't really mean much. You really need to know what you're accountable for. So what is the scope of your role?
Well, let me answer that a couple ways. Okay, so my title just changed. So, I was hired in as executive director of facilities, and carried that title until almost, I would say, probably 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
the organization is is a very young and very small system with 3 hospitals, in our market. And so we are working very hard to take a systems approach. So we're really looking for a strategic leader for facilities here. So my new title is Senior Director of Facilities.
Okay.
So, and I have a hard time even remember that it's so new. So, but senior directors in our organization have network responsibility, system responsibility. So the position coming in, my position right now is responsible for all the facilities for Owensboro Health, Inc. That includes our hospitals, our what we call our health plexes, our outpatient facilities, our urgent cares, our medical office buildings, our exercise facilities, our doctor's offices. So Owensboro Health serves 18 counties in Western Kentucky, Southern Indiana, and so we got a really wide market, and we have facilities in all of those, pretty much all of those areas. So the job is responsible for basically all the hard assets that are the non-clinical clinical assets for the organization.
Wow. So do you have your facilities management? Do you have planning, design, construction, safety, security? What else rolls up under you with that title?
Yeah, so the typical facilities leader department, so maintenance and engineering, environmental services,
Okay.
clinical engineering, safety and security, the couriers, the grounds, all construction, all healthcare construction activities. Like I say, PDC, that all falls under this role for all of our market.
Big role. It's a big
Yeah,
role.
it is a big role, and it's an exciting role, and the organization is in some exciting times, and it's been really fun, Pete, to be associated with an organization that has money to do the necessary things that have to be done to maintain and grow our facilities and our market.
That's what I was going to ask you about next, Joe, is relative to, having the money. I mean, as you know, people aren't jumping to organizations that don't have the ability to fund, future work. It's just too, with all the challenges you have, that's another one. So can you tell us a little bit though about, the financial component of it without getting into details, but you got the money to do what you need to do. How does all of that work and how does that function?
Sure, sure. Well, just to let you know, again, I came here from Colorado Springs, and one of the things that I asked even 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago, was how do you fund your infrastructure needs?
Hmm.
And the CEO at the time, actually COO at the time, kind of laughed at me, and he said, our philosophy is that we need to do the right things, and we need to do them the right way. He said our focus is on quality and patient safety. And he said what we found, at least for the last 5 years, his last 5 years, is if you focus on quality and patient safety as number one, that the margin comes.
Huh.
And I said, so tell me about that, because that's an interesting philosophy that's really not out there,
Right.
hasn't picked up legs yet out there in our market. And he said, we've had double-digit EBITDA for the last 5 years that he was there. And I thought that was really interesting, because
Yes.
nobody was having double-digit, profitability back even in those days. And since I've been here, the 15 years I've been here, and we just started a new fiscal year, of those 15 years, I would say that probably 13 of them we had double-digit EBITDA. And for the other 2, we approached double-digit EBITDA. So we fund pretty much all of our infrastructure needs right from operating capital generated from operations. We have gone to the market for funding, but that was for the hospital, the large hospital here in Owensboro, 477-bed hospital, and that was back in 2010 and 11. So we're paying down that debt. when I come to our senior leadership and I say, hey, I've got a project, and I can document the need for the project, I typically get the money that I need to do the project. Doesn't mean we don't have continuing infrastructure needs and continuing capital needs, but really when I sit down and say, here's the risks, here's the rewards, if the rewards are high enough, I get approval to do the projects. And it's a really nice position to be in, and I know a lot of my colleagues out in the market wish they were in that position.
Well, as you're talking about checking boxes for an opportunity, that's certainly a major box to be able to check. Who do you, Joe, who do you report into?
Sure. So I report to the System Chief Operating Officer, Beth Steele. Beth is an exceptional leader and an exceptional human being. This is my 10th hospital in my career, and the one that I've stayed at the longest. And were I not retiring, I would consider, staying here forever. She's passionate about patient care and providing a safe environment for the people that seek us out and have those needs. She's also a great team leader herself. Our operations team is a group of exceptional leaders, all of whom have different management leadership styles, but we all fit together, and we as we fit together, we generate we just have a passionate, efficient, very intelligent, very intellectual group of people, all focused on doing the same thing, the right way. So,
wow, I want to delve into fit in a bit because it's so critically important, and it's probably the one variable that you can't always tell as much as we try in the interview process. But I know you mentioned to me, you said you worked at 10 hospitals. This is your 10th. You've been there the longest. This is your favorite. I mean, this has been the best opportunity. What is it, Joe? You've seen a lot. What is it that sets Owensboro apart from previous employers?
So I think the biggest thing is what I've already mentioned, Pete. The fact that our focus is on doing the right thing the right way and patient safety, and it was the same way when we built this hospital, and which opened in 2013. As we built the hospital, we would take a look at what are the industry standards for quality patient care and patient safety. And as we were moving along, we changed some of our design to make sure we provided those things. And even if it cost more money to build the hospital, which it did, that was the orientation of our senior leadership, and still today. Just as an example, so we got a 9-story patient tower, and all the patient rooms are same-handed. So you walk in the patient room, and the patient's head is always on the same side of the room. Bathroom is always in the same place. The hand washing for the nursing is always in the same place. Everything is the same. So it's the old story, you play like you practice. And so if you go in, if a clinician goes into the room and has a patient care modality with a patient, and she goes to the next room 2 stories down, the room's the same. So he or she repeats that process over and over and over again, and the result of that is they get good at it. They don't have to go back and forth. Now, any engineer that's built a hospital knows that in order to have same-handed rooms, you got to double the amount of utilities, because you can't branch off from opposite head walls. So that's a very expensive modification to a construction project, but the focus is on, again, it's on patient safety, and ultimately it pays off in the quality quality of care.
Joe, I think these are all things, just from my recruiting experience, these are all the questions that a person at your level can answer, right? I mean, it's because you live it intimately. Human resources is great to provide the organizational perspective, the area perspective, which you offer. But I think, as you know, people in your line of work, they like to talk to you because
Yeah.
you know what's behind those walls.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the network. And more importantly, share it with your colleagues in the healthcare industry. Together, we can solve the aging crisis that's impacting all of us.
I've got a leadership team that reports to me. It's about, our whole organization that reports up through facilities is something in the neighborhood of 350 team members. And I kind of look at it that part of my responsibility is for 350 families, so that's kind of the way that I look at things, and that I manage the human resources here.
Yeah.
But the leaders that report up through me are extremely talented, extremely dedicated, high integrity. They all feel the same. They get along. I don't think there's anybody that could come to an organization cold and find a better group of leaders to kind of buoy them up, until they reach full stride with the organization. My biomed guy has been here over 40 years, and
Wow.
and has no, at least has not expressed any desire to retire anytime real soon. My senior manager in maintenance and engineering has been here 35 years, I believe. He's still hanging out for a while.
Hanging
You
out.
know,
I like that.
So like I say, I got a and these guys have now been given responsibility for their piece of the system. So my biomed senior manager is responsible for biomed throughout the market. The senior manager for security and safety is responsible for all the safety and security and emergency management throughout the market. And those positions report up to me or whoever's coming in to replace me.
So it sounds like you have managers at each of your, on the FM side, on the EVS side. I guess what I'm asking, well staffed so that everybody's not rolling up to you. You have a layer beneath.
Yes. So my direct reports are probably nine
Okay.
direct reports.
Okay.
And that includes some staff that have no direct reports below them.
You were talking, you mentioned fit, Joe, and one of the questions I always like to ask when we were doing the recruiting was, what type of a person works culturally at the organization, and what type of a person is just a complete no-go for the organization? Because again, every organization is a little bit different, although soft skills are pretty uniform across the board. But can you answer that? What works? What doesn't work?
I think a collaborative leader is going to do the best. Doesn't mean that the collaborative leader can't be a strong person with strong opinions. But this operations team is also strong. And we really don't need somebody that's going to come in here and feel like they know everything and can do everything. And that's not really what I think is going to succeed here. It has not succeeded in the past. But at the same time, we don't need somebody that, well, the facilities position. Sometimes you got to make hard decisions and make them quickly.
Yeah.
So we do need someone that is very skilled at knowing the environment of care, and knows what can and should happen in the environment of care. And for those issues that directly impact patient care and patient safety, they do take a strong, opinion, a strong position. You don't have to speak Southern to come here, Pete. You know, there are a lot of people that don't, you know, over time, they may start to speak Southern. You know, I do. But whoever comes in here has got a ready-made winning team.
Huh.
And um, if if they have the philosophy, the internal philosophy of being kind of a coach leader and a collaborative leader, I think they'll be very successful.
Yeah, I mean, staff composition, staff is always such a important component to success, right? You can't succeed without them. Is that Joe, union, non-union staff?
Non-union.
Non-union.
Yes,
And on the
we're a right to work state.
okay. And are any of your departments, maybe the EVS, is anything outsourced or are they all internal employees?
All team members are internal.
Okay.
We have a contract with Crawford for management of our EVS service. Crawford has been with us for 10 years. The team is solid here, working hard. You know, it's interesting you say that. We work very hard even to make sure that the Crawford management team that's here feels that they are a part of Owensboro Health as well. So, you know, pretty much all the free meals, all the free t-shirts, all the events, you know, cafeteria discounts, all that other thing. They want to be considered part of the team, and that we want them to feel like they're part of the team as well.
On the horizon, now you said that your new building opened in 2013, not that long ago, but time does go quickly. Are there any, from a PDC perspective or from an expansion perspective, any projects on the horizon that this person is likely to be dealing with slash managing slash involved with?
Yes, let me say that succinctly.
Yeah, that was pretty
Although I
quick.
can't really go into detail publicly here on what those plans are at this point, but whoever comes in needs to have PDC experience and background because they will be involved in ground up construction, you know, as well as a bunch of renovation. So just as an example, we look at this hospital, Owensboro Health Regional Hospital, you know, as a new hospital. It is new compared to a lot of hospitals out there, even though it's about 12 years old, you know, right now. So we're starting to run into some of those infrastructure changes that have to happen as equipment gets a little more age on it, and we're finding that here. Our other two hospitals are smaller hospitals. One is 65 beds, and the other is, I think, 96 beds. And they're in more rural markets, and they are older facilities, so they have some infrastructure needs as well. But you know, we're looking at additional ambulatory care facilities out there in our market. There's a lot of opportunity for PDC on the horizon.
So when you say, Joe, PDC background, PDC experience, can you, obviously they need the FM, but when you say PD, do you mean having led the process or having accountability for it? How much PDC experience do you feel is needed?
Well, when I came here, and you know, my background is zero didactic PDC experience. So I've got it. I think the best way to say it is from a leadership standpoint. Whoever comes in here needs to be able to foster the process. You need to be able to work well with, you know, with your A&E team. You need to be familiar with construction processes and systems. You need to have the ability to review bid specifications, and you need to be able to hire good consultants out there in the market. And you need to have the time to be able to walk projects and see if anything is unusual and ask questions. But more than anything, we have team members and consultants already in place that know us, that know our processes, that Um, uh, yeah, we're pretty set up for somebody that's coming in that knows how to lead projects.
And do you have PMs that you keep on staff, or do you ramp up and down as needed?
We ramp up and down as needed. We do have a single project manager that reports to our senior manager of maintenance and engineering right now. And I would say that pretty much that project manager works for us on projects that are, in the probably less than $1 million.
Okay.
Anything that it's above that, we build that PM effort into the cost or into the budget for the project. And that goes up or down depending on how busy we are at the time. So I've also got our internal PM involved in larger projects as well, oftentimes to supplement a contracted PM that's out there.
Yeah, yeah, that's typical. Joe, I wanted to ask you, and you kind of just delved into it a little bit. We always have a job description, right? Sometimes the job description doesn't capture everything. Sometimes job descriptions are copied from position to position, so they're not always completely accurate. But what beyond the words of the job description, Joe, what does this person, what skills do they need? What do they need to be able to do?
So I think that it would benefit the successful candidate looking for this to have some experience um, um, with communications with the C-suite.
Hmm.
Um, so, over the years, I've established a really good relationship with, my boss and the board and the CEO and they rely on me for definition of things that concern them. So I would think it would be good to have in your skill list, in your bag of tricks, good verbal and written communications, um, good analytic skills, being able to, like I say, demonstrate why it's important to do this, and what the cost benefit is going to be. We still have people that can help with that here if that's not quite a strength for somebody that's looking for that job. I have a financial analyst that works for me and my division that can always provide, assistance with that. But I think those higher level skills that deal with that communicating well with the C-suite and the board, I think would be a huge benefit.
This isn't necessarily tied to the role, your role that you're recruiting for now, but just from a skill perspective, Joe, I was, listening to your answer from when you began in 1979, when Woody Hayes was still prowling the sidelines, up till now in 2025. How have you seen that technical component and that communication soft skill? How has that flipped from like a percentage basis over the past 25, 36 years?
I think it's still a matter, just like it was in 1979. I think it's still dependent on the size of your organization. The skills necessary for leadership in the 65-bed hospital are mostly technical. The skills essential in a 477-bed hospital are mostly soft because I've got the technical expertise that reports to me, but I've also got the technical expertise that I've acquired over all these years, in the business. The people that I have in the periphery in our other facilities, I want them to know their facility inside and out from a technical basis. They don't necessarily have the same level of soft skills that I have or that somebody needs in
Yeah.
my position. But I will tell you, in addition to that, it's a kind of a good segue. I am passionate about education, and I'm passionate about providing our team members with what they need to be successful, not just in their roles here for Owensboro Health, in their lives, as family members. So if I have somebody here that is a general maintenance mechanic who wants one day to be a senior director of facilities, I work with them to help provide a plan for them to get to that role. And we've done that a number of times here. Unfortunately, sometimes those people leave and they go to other places, but I still look at that as a victory. If that individual's family benefits from what we provided here and they can go somewhere else and be successful, I think that's a victory. Also, if I can give or I can help give our team members here the knowledge, like environment of care knowledge, technical knowledge, that they need to do their job better, I think it benefits our patients. I have a much safer facility or facilities. And, I got these guys, for instance, that, have achieved the certified healthcare facility technician credential that we have paid for them to get if they want it. And we also give them a $2.50 kicker on their salary if they earn that. And the logic for that, Pete, is if I've got 20 or 30 people walking around my building that understand the life safety code, if they see something that puts the organization or our patients at risk, they identify it and then they fix it. And so I don't have that risk anymore. Yeah. So it's really a pretty inexpensive way to continue to assure that we provide the highest level of patient safety and accountability here.
Yeah, no, risk mitigation, right? I loved your answer, Joe, relative to talking about this, like the skills needed, the difference between 477 and 65. And the reason is, I used to say that a lot. I think sometimes we're so black and white with what we're looking for. We don't always allow for that nuance that you did, knowing that 65 beds is different than 477. And I think sometimes we need to, as an industry, we need to bring a little more of that in. And let's not just automatically check boxes on people. Let's kind of look into it a little bit deeper to see, okay, maybe I can start this person at a 65 bed hospital, but I wouldn't at the force. I really liked that answer because working with clients, you don't always get that level of differentiation, which I think is really important.
Yeah, and I think that we're doing a better job to letting our senior leaders know what's required.
Yeah.
So for instance, the chief operating officers at our smaller hospitals, may be used to a different way of operating than at the larger facilities, but the requirements are all the same from an environment of care, standpoint. And so, a Joint Commission or DMV, surveyors showing up, they don't care whether they're coming to a 477 bed hospital or a 65 bed hospital. They're still looking for the same things. Yeah. So part of the benefit of what we're doing as a system is we're supporting each other, backing each other up. I mean, today I've got, our senior manager of safety and security. He's at one of our smaller hospitals reviewing their environment of care documentation. So just to make sure that they're presenting their information to our authorities having jurisdiction similarly as we are at our large facilities, and that they have what they need to be really successful, even though they're a 65 bed hospital and may not have all the same resources.
Right. Well, it's kind of like I came up through project management. If whether you're managing a project that's say 100K or $1 million or $2 million, you have all those same headaches, right? You have to do the same things all the time. It's just your monetary amount, maybe the amount of people you're dealing with is smaller, but you're still doing the same things.
That's right. Good point.
So Joe, as we come to the end of our time, so this is Joe Taylor. Joe is retiring in September. Joe, September what? Have you picked a date?
I'll be leaving September 2nd, the day after Labor Day.
Okay. So Labor Day, September 1st.
Yep, Monday.
As a history buff, September 1st, 1939, I always think of the start of World War II. You're going in a different direction. You're retiring. Sorry. What, Joe, and again, we want to help you fill this position. Is there anything that we did not touch on or in anything in closing, to attract that person who's going to step into that great role that you've been able to create and fill?
I would encourage your viewers, your listeners to use the QR code. If you're interested at all, apply. Doesn't hurt to apply and gather information. I will also, make myself available if you're curious and you want to know some additional information. You're very welcome to email me. My email is Joe.Taylor, Taylor, at owensborohealth.org, all one word, Joe.Taylor, owensborohealth.org. And I'd be very happy to answer any of your questions on the phone, to chat, and give you some directions, even to let you know whether you might be a good candidate for the role.
Again, I go back to my recruiting days. I would always tell people to apply, right? You got nothing to lose. I mean,
No.
and who knows, maybe you get an interview and maybe you don't get it, but you learn something. You learn where your weaknesses are, you learn where your strength. It's a great practice.
Yeah, and I think it's all about the people, Pete, too. And the people here are excellent. And just an example, I was thinking about this morning is, I don't know if you can see this coffee cup, but
Yes.
it says Bluegrass Rocks, Owensboro, Kentucky. And I didn't know anything about bluegrass until I got here, and now I just love it. But Owensboro is the bluegrass capital of the world. The Bluegrass Hall of Fame and Museum is here. Music is one of the things we do best in Owensboro. But Angie Dennis, the recruiter, gave me that cup when I came for my first or second interview here. And Angie Dennis is the recruiter for my replacement, 15 and a half years later. And, I'll just tell you one thing that we really haven't touched on is the community. So I told you what my wife thought about coming to Kentucky. Well, after my first interview, I told her, I said, I think I really like this place. And so I was invited back for an interview by Angie for a second interview, and she said, bring your family. And I'm a father of 6, and so when I came back, my two boys, one was getting ready to go into middle school, and one was getting ready to go into high school. And I grew up, moving around with my dad, who was a chemical engineer with the DuPont company. And so I knew what getting relocated as a kid was, how it felt. And so I brought my wife and my 2 sons here to Owensboro and for the second interview. And during the second interview, I went one way, they went another with a realtor and somebody else looking at the community. I got back to the hotel after the event that night, and my son was actually standing in the hallway, and he said, "How'd it go tonight, Dad?" I'm in my suit and tie and all this, and I said, "What? I think it went really well, son. Why?" He said, "Walk with me." I said, "Okay." So we walk just down the hall past all these other rooms, and I said, "Son, what's up?" And he stopped and he said, "So you think it went okay?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "How'd your day go?" He said, "It went really well. We saw a lot of things, yada yada. Dad, don't mess this up."
Wow.
Which I remember his face. I remember the whole thing. So my son, who I was concerned about,
Yeah.
really hating to leave his friends and going into high school, what he saw here in the community impressed him. And we are a community that also is committed to athletics and, the ball fields and football and soccer and, everything is just, the community puts a lot of effort and a lot of emphasis on the kids. And he was so impressed that he didn't want me to mess it up and lose an opportunity to come here. So
You listen to them.
If that gives you any idea of the quality of the community.
Well, Joe Taylor, you did a better job explaining that than any piece of paper could do.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was outstanding. So, Joe, thank you for your time. And just to reiterate, if people are interested in the opportunity, Joe said to contact him. We got the QR code. Reach right out. Joe, good luck. I'm sure we'll be in touch before you retire on September 2nd, but I appreciate your time this morning.
Okay, well, thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Joe. This is Peter
All
Martin for the Healthcare Facilities Network. As always, thank you for watching.
If you want to be a guest on a future episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network, go to healthcarefacilitiesnetwork.com and let us know who you are and what you want to talk about, because together we can solve this critical aging issue.